The James J. Rubovits Award honors the best paper presented during the NEERO annual conference. All attendees have the opportunity to nominate a paper during the conference, and winners are notified prior to the following year's conference. And in this case, the winner was nominated, about a year and a half ago. So she's been incredibly patient and persistent with us. The award presentation is truly a highlight of the conference, and we are thrilled to welcome our James J. Rubovits Award winner. So I will begin by introducing her. The 2020 James J. Rubovits Award goes to Dr. Lakshmi Frechette. Dr. Frechette was awarded the Rubovits Award Best Paper from the NEERO 2019 conference for her paper, Teacher Candidate Disposition, a Framework for Unpacking and Supporting Intellectual, Cultural, and Moral Dispositions. In addition to being a mother of 5 young children, Dr. Frechette writes for Lexington Books, an imprint of the Roland Littlefield Publishing Group, and she also designs and presents professional development workshops for teacher candidates and novice educators, including K-12 family partnerships, advancing dispositional attitudes, lean-in training, and stop-action coaching via neural pathway reinforcement. Dr. Frechette earned her doctorate from the University of Hartford in 2019, and in congratulations, she recently accepted a position at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. She has been incredibly supportive and patient with NEERO over the past year, as she would have otherwise presented her research at the NEERO 2020 conference. However, 1 year later, we are no less excited and eager to learn with and from her. And it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Frechette for her presentation.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Reagan, for that lovely introduction. That was very kind. Thank you to the entire NEERO board for spotlighting my research. Welcome all to the NEERO 2021 conference. I'm excited to share my research with you. My name is Lakshmi Frechette. I am the 2020 recipient of the James J. Rubovits Award. I am thoroughly honored. I am humbled to be amongst such talented scholarship. And so I'm ready to begin. Fellow researchers, dearest colleagues, my mentors that I know are here with me today, my loving family, my friends, doctoral students, graduate students, thank you for joining me. I'm going to screen share a PowerPoint that I've prepared to walk you through my NEERO 2019 paper presentation that earned me this award. Okay, hope that everybody can see that and this is working well. As for everyone, this platform's a little bit new, but I'm ready to begin. And I always like to start any paper or project that I do with a quote or a phrase that captures the substance or meaning of my work. And in this case, I share with you a fond memory from tucking my 4-year-old son at the time, Joe, in at night. I was reading to him The 500 Hats of Bartholomew Cubbins by Dr. Seuss. And as I closed the tattered, threadbare binding, the book creaked a little and it stirred him. And I had had a lot on my mind that day. And Joe looked at me and I said, Joe, people wear many hats in a lifetime. And he looked at me sleepily and he said, yeah, like the Red Sox and the Yankees? And I chuckled and I said, something like that. I share this personal story with you as a springboard into my presentation because over a lifetime, we all wear many hats. And the impetus for this research began as my hats slowly changed over the years. In my early 20s, I was an elementary teacher, and I loved my job. I loved the hustle and bustle of the classroom. I adored my 5th graders. I enjoyed collaborating with fellow teachers and administrators. However, the one area without fail that turned my stomach, rattled my core, and made my heart nervously beat out of my chest, I was ill-prepared for parent and family partnerships. Fast forward to my early 30s, I became the parent, wearing the mother hat. Together, my husband and I have 5 children, my kids, 2 preteen girls and 3 teenage boys today. But back when they were small and they entered public school, I really began to see the classroom and the system much differently than I did when I was wearing my teacher hat. I was bothered by the social dynamics between home and school. I was puzzled about the angst that I once felt as the classroom teacher, and then the current social static that I was receiving as a parent. Both parties appearing to keep the other at arm's length. Why? So I had this idea that if I became an educational leader, I would be able to nail down my visionary planks and bridge such partnerships. So in my early 40s, I pursued a 6-year degree in educational leadership, thinking that if I became a principal or a district leader, I could build this microcosm space that values parent-teacher partnerships. And as I sat in my coursework, I began to feel I wanted to make a broader difference with parent and family engagement in public education, and that this would come through higher education, specifically teacher education, and working with teacher candidates to impress upon them the purpose and practice of employing family engagement strategies to the benefit of student success. So today, my cap is that of a thought leader. How can we do things better? In what ways can I contribute my knowledge and experiences to move ideas forward? Well, the answer is research, right? Doctoral studies. So I pursued research in the area of parent-teacher partnerships, specifically probing the dispositions of teacher candidates to engage parents in supporting their children's learning. So the problem of practice that I pursued was twofold. I looked at teacher candidates and their understanding of parent and family engagement. Are they prepared to work with parents and families? Do they have the knowledge and understanding of theoretical models, the skills and strategies to build successful partnerships? And second, I looked at dispositions assessments, because at the time my research was conducted, CAPE, the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, had charged educator preparation programs, or EPPs, with the responsibility of assessing teacher candidates' dispositions. Now, autonomy was extended to EPPs to develop dispositions assessments that measure and document teacher candidates' dispositions. But the question was how to make it authentic and meaningful, more than just mere checklists of observable behaviors. So, uniting these two concerns, this study pursued the construct of teacher candidates' dispositions and dispositions on their future actions, dispositions on their future actions through the lens of parent engagement. It identified ways to authentically address dispositions in general, as well as strengthen their teacher training on building parent partnerships. So what does the literature say? I conducted 2 comprehensive literature reviews, one on the impact of parent engagement in public education, and the other on teacher education and barriers for implementation. The findings that support my research trajectory indicate the parent as the child's first and most important teacher, dating all the way back from Plato, Locke, Rousseau, up and through the turn of the 19th century and the beginnings of today, what we know as the PTA. In the 1970s, Title I, empowering the parent role, is integral to children's educational success, and today research continues to encourage the parental role in children's education. Ultimately, when parents are engaged in their children's public education, student success soars, not only academically, but socially and emotionally. Parent engagement in children's public school education improves test scores, retention, graduation rates, and this is proven across all social economic status, race, gender, English language learners, and special education. Findings also indicate that when parents are engaged in their children's public education, that overall school improvement is a ripple effect in the form of after-school programs, fundraising, tutoring, and volunteerism. A literature review on teacher education and parent engagement instruction uncovered, although it appears to be agreed upon as integral to teacher candidate development, there are 3 barriers of implementation: curriculum, standards, and dispositional barriers. Curriculum barriers, related to curriculum barriers, parent engagement instruction is more prevalent in early childhood and special educations, not so much seen in K-12 preparation. Curricular barriers include a lack of systemic support, limited resources, questions as to if it should be mainstreamed across all curricular programming or a separate course altogether, as well as concerns regarding an already overloaded curriculum, faculty resistance to change, and excessive graduation requirements. Standards barriers include state and national accreditation guidelines which lack attention to parent engagement. Now, CAPE lacks definitive support. However, they do offer a family engagement pipeline to EPPs through online tutorials, interactive modules, and webinars. It's really fantastic. I would encourage you to check it out if this is your area of interest. And then Title I, although requires schools to create family engagement policies, still many states struggle with how to encourage and maintain positive relationships with parents and families. And finally, dispositional barriers among faculty and cooperating mentor teachers in the field have an impact on teacher candidates' perceptions on parent and family partnerships. And so the conceptual framework that I adapted to scaffold my research questions comes from Schussler, Burkow, and Stewksbury's ICM model. I used 3 research questions to examine teacher candidate self-awareness across their intellectual, cultural, and moral dispositions and dispositions on future action regarding parent and family partnerships in public education. My goal was to identify their patterns of thinking on parent engagement and how such thinking manifests as dispositions on future actionable practice. So to collect my data, I employed a qualitative single case action research study with triangulation. The limitations of sample size N6, 5 were from elementary programming, 1 was from secondary programming. But the limitations from sample size N6 encouraged the process of triangulation to increase the credibility of findings. The 3 methods of data collection employed included photo elicitation with journal analysis. I conducted semi-structured interviews with each participant and a focus group as well. Now I must stress findings speak to the phenomenon of the patterns of thinking particular to this setting, and therefore cannot and should not be generalized to all teacher candidates and teacher education programs. To this point, the findings do offer translatability and comparability and may conceptually be related to external validity. So, this is the photo that I use for participant data with journaling. For those of you that are qualitative researchers, photo elicitation is a wonderful method. It seeks to elicit and evoke different parts of human consciousness than word-alone interviews can do. Research indicates that different parts of the human brain are called upon when viewing photographs and images as compared to hearing ideas and thoughts presented through conversations. So participants were asked to consider the 9 individuals that you see here as parents to students in their classroom. 6 written prompts were provided with this still image. 15 minutes was provided for participants to journal respond in no more than 2 written pages their thoughts. I laid out the questions separately as 6 questions. Here I condensed it on the slide so that it would fit. And basically I asked, which 2 parents, if any, do you feel most confident to build a successful parent-teacher partnership with? And I also asked which they would feel least confident. Why do you think you select these parents? Describe where you think your confidence may come from or where your lack of confidence may come from. And I also asked in what ways can teacher education programs strengthen teacher candidates' levels of efficacy to interact successfully with parents and families. And so raw data can be very powerful in that it shares a window into participants' perspectives. And so I wanted to put into this presentation a few excerpts from participants' journal data, interview data, as well as the focus group data. So bear with me. I hope that you enjoy this part of the presentation. I think it speaks volumes. So from the journal data excerpts, these were the voices of or the journaling of the participants in my study. I'd feel less confident building a successful partnership with Lorenza and Michael because they are much older than me. It would be difficult to connect with them, and because I'm much younger, they may feel that I am not experienced enough to be their child's teacher. I would feel most confident about developing a relationship with these two parents. I got a gut reaction to them because they remind me of parents that I've dealt successfully with in the past. Leah is a very young parent. I question how much time she has to dedicate to her child. With the older parent, Michael, he may have time, but he may be more stuck in his ways about how he wants things done. Both would make for difficult partnerships. I am most confident about building partnerships with Autumn and Kelly because they seem relatable. They are female like me and appear to be middle class by their clothing. I'd have a better understanding of their experiences, making connecting with them easier. An emphasis on the topic would be beneficial since it's such a vital part of this profession. I didn't think about it in depth until field experiences and this case study. We should do more scenarios, real life problems teachers encounter. It's one thing to hear how my professor handled it, but I would learn more from having to find a solution on my own. Excerpts from the interview data, which was a one-on-one conversation with my participants. Again, speaking to dispositions with parent engagement in public education. It's a reservation that I have talking to them, parents, for my fear of being judged or being negatively received and how that would impact me. The class I took, Black Families in American Society, it was really eye-opening and really helpful for me. So I think especially if you're going to be working in an area with different cultures, you need to care about the different cultures in your classroom and do some research. The interactions with parents that I get to see are so limited. Like, I know I will send monthly newsletters and email communications and parent-teacher conferences, but is that it really? I don't know. I had to call a parent at my job because their child bit someone. She yelled at me asking why I didn't stop it. What was I doing when it happened? So it's like she shifted the blame on me. I felt like I was at a loss. I was taken aback, definitely. I was like, what do I say? What do I do? I stuttered a little and I didn't really know what to say. Dealing with parent confrontation, I worry about that. I was in field work and a parent just showed up to the door of the classroom during a lesson. That parent was very unhappy and started freaking out at the teacher. I was like, wow, what would I do if that was me? Okay, and bear with me. I think this is interesting. I enjoy this stuff, and I hope that it's a window into you're able to see and feel what the participants are feeling as teacher candidates in a program, thinking about how they're going to be able to work with teachers in their beginning practice. So the focus group data, again, a focus group, they're all talking together and bouncing ideas off of one another, sharing their thoughts on parent-teacher engagement, and then reintegrating their ideas. So this was the conversation and the excerpts from the focus group data. I believe it's a very important relationship, parent-teacher, in some ways more important than the teacher-student relationship in different areas because it allows you, the teacher, to have a better connection to understanding how the student is growing as an individual. I'd want to assist parents in need, especially for my students, but I'm not sure how that works. I think it's a bit challenging to do it, culturally responsive parent engagement. Like with just contacting the parent. There are some parents that you can't get a hold of, or they just don't have the time to speak to you, or they don't want to speak to you. What do you do then? I don't know how a parent would take that as far as like me overstepping my boundaries. So I would think having a caseworker or guidance counselor do that, assist parents in need, would be better for the parent-teacher relationship. I feel like it's an age thing, parent engagement, and probably because my parents' support decreased as I went up through the grades. We don't get that interaction with parents, but yeah, the diverse environment gives me a lot to think about. So, wow, what do you think? Just from these excerpts, if you had to translate junior level teacher candidates' intellectual, cultural, and moral dispositions in a nutshell from this setting. Well, I was able to generate 15 codes from the topics and patterns that emerged from all of the triangulated raw data. And I developed these codes in conjunction with the 3 research questions of the study. And I won't read them all to you. I'll just pick out a few, for example, of coding. If I felt like, for example, MTE, if I felt that what the teacher candidate was suggesting was mentor teachers and teacher educators influence teacher candidate dispositions and dispositions on future action to engage parents, I coded it as MTE. Another one, PA. Parental age impacts teacher candidate dispositions and dispositions on their future action. And just one more, CR. Teacher candidates' inclinations on culturally responsive parent engagement impact moral dispositions and dispositions in action to engage parents. These were the codes. And then after all the data were coded, I examined the relationships that existed among the codes and patterns, and I was able to suggest 14 findings of the study. 6 came from intellectual dispositions. Sorry, I'm getting the sunshine in very bright here. 6 came from intellectual dispositions, 5 came from cultural dispositions, and 3 findings came from moral dispositions. So the findings for intellectual dispositions, 1.1, participants' reports suggest lack of curricular content on K-12 parent engagement. 1.2, participants' reports suggest that mentor teachers and teacher educators influence intellectual dispositions. 1.4, participants' reports suggest positive interactions with parents increase efficacy on future actual practice to engage partnerships. 1.5, participants' report suggests negative interactions with parents decrease efficacy and introduces biases on future actionable practice to engage parents. And finally, 1.6, participants' perceptions of parent engagement suggest transactional behaviors in the form of just one-way communication. Findings for cultural dispositions, 2.1, participants' own cultural backgrounds appear to impact cultural dispositions. This is related to participants' own race, gender, ethnicity, their social economic status, their family dynamic, the family's educational level, demographics, and first language. 2.2, participants' childhood experiences related to their parents' level of school engagement with teachers appear to impact cultural dispositions. 2.3, participants' self-awareness of personal strengths appear to positively impact cultural dispositions. 2.4, participants' anxiety-filled interactions with diverse parents and families appear to introduce biases and negatively impact cultural dispositions. 2.5, participants' reports suggest inclination to practice culturally responsive parent partnerships, yet indicate naive perceptions and limited skill sets to build such partnerships. And lastly, my findings from moral dispositions, 3.1, participants' reports suggest that perceptions on the vocation of teaching impact moral dispositions and dispositions on future actual practice to partner with parents and families. 3.2, participants' reports suggest inclinations and assumptions to build parental capacity, yet in the form of one-sided action plans. And lastly, 3.3, participants' reports suggest inclinations and assumptions to assist parents and families in need, yet in the form of career ideal perceptions related to helping others. Okay, and so then the findings get collapsed into conclusions of the study, and I was able to generate 4 conclusions particular to this setting and participants' experience. Again, this cannot be generalized to all teacher candidates and teacher education programs. However, the 4 conclusions do attend to teacher candidate dispositions on K-12 parent engagement and may provide a framework for continuous improvement on curricular programming and dispositions assessments. So I'm going to share with you my conclusions. Conclusion 1. Teacher candidates' dispositions on K-12 parent engagement evidence that their lived experiences carried patterns of thinking from their past into their current professional preparation, playing an important role regarding future actionable practice related to engaging parents in supporting their children's education. Conclusion 2, teacher candidates' dispositional barriers on K-12 parent engagement evidence that ambiguity subsists in systems of support as related to building candidates' efficacy on engaging parents and supporting their children's education. Conclusion 3, the dispositions of teacher candidates appeared simplistic, situational in nature, and limited to their cultural background, age, and inexperience. Conclusion 4, teacher candidates' dispositions appeared sensible and yet altruistically naive, both which were navigated by perceptions that idealize the vocation of teaching. Okay, and so I delineated implications for practice through 2 recommendations. One, curriculum instruction, and then the other being dispositions assessment. So regarding curriculum and instruction, what I would recommend, teacher education programs can better support teacher candidate dispositions on parent and family partnerships if they provide candidates with increased opportunities to explore and reflect on their dispositions in action. If they develop and implement K-12 parent and family curricular goals, objectives, and lesson plans alongside standardized field experiences. If they increase learner goals, objectives, and field experiences designed to prepare teacher candidates with the critical knowledge, specific skills, and engage partnerships with parents and families from culturally diverse backgrounds. And also delve into the moral realms of parent-teacher partnership through mindful instructional practices so as to provide teacher candidates the freedom and creativity to flexibly explore and grow into their own altruistic decision-making processes. And three characteristics of mindful instructional practice, and we can put this through the lens of parent engagement. It's the intention to cultivate awareness of parent engagement, the attention to what's occurring in the present moment, and an attitude that is non-judgmental, curious, and kind. CARE is a program, it's a training, it's an acronym, CARE, and this training aims to keep teachers' feelings from having a negative impact in the classroom, to recognize their emotions and manage them in ways that are positive for both themselves and their students, which again, we can put on the lens of parent and family partnerships. Okay, and then recommendations for dispositions assessment. They have to be reflective self-measures, ongoing, and linked to development if we want to make them authentic. So authentic dispositions assessments measure intellectual dispositional growth in the form of behavioral approaches through contextualized applications, right? Getting them to write their written beliefs tied to practice. What do they think, feel, know? I agree because, I disagree because. One personal example of this is, so getting them to really, hone those thoughts and feelings on parent engagement, but tied to practice in multiple ways. You could do case studies, videotapes of teaching in the classroom, or even observing their mentor teachers within the classrooms as well. Authentic dispositions assessments measure cultural dispositions growth in the form of individualized mentoring via increased field experiences in culturally diverse settings. Right? Teacher candidate self-reports journaled over extensive intervals on cultural humility is important, and the mentor teachers are critical to cultural dispositions growth. And finally, measure moral dispositions growth in the form of formative assessments that monitor and tailor developmental growth. Right? We have to shift the emphasis away from summative measures and rather employ formative measures that help teacher candidates explore and grow into their own professional morals. Okay, and then finally, future research. This research was built on existing findings that uphold the importance of parent engagement in public education. However, little is known about the dispositions regarding forming positive relationships between parent and teacher and what actual dispositions yield meaningful partnerships. So building on this research, future research could include certainly a secondary analysis extension of this research with increased sample size and multiple case settings. Novice experiences, what is the relationship among candidates' preparatory field experiences and their first year practice related to parent partnerships? And as far as dispositions assessment, defining scoring criteria, sound measurement reports evidence, sound measurements report evidence of construct validity and reliability. In what ways can this adapted ICM model be shaped to include such evidence? And another idea for future research, we need indicators and behaviors. The adapted ICM model delivers portfolio measures. In what ways can it be shaped to include specific indicators and behaviors? Okay, and well, this concludes my presentation. And so before we begin a brief question answer exchange, I really want to thank you for your time and your attention to my research. I hope that the takeaway here is not only the significance of parent and family partnerships in public education, but that our future teachers are in need of teacher education supports to gain family engagement knowledge, skills, and dispositions prior to beginning their careers to better serve all families and students. And that if we are to shape the dispositional development of our teacher candidates to that of that it factor facilitator in future classrooms, ongoing self-reports linked to development is how we build authentic dispositions assessment. And one more thing I was thinking of and reflecting on the feedback given in the chat from my question to Dr. Yolanda Sealy-Ruiz this morning, I'm inspired to think even more so that the parent-teacher connection is critical to moving forward racial literacy and cultural humility. So, thank you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Frechette. I'm going to give you a round of applause, and we're going to pause for a moment so that all of the audience members in chat can congratulate you and applaud you for your phenomenal presentation and very relevant and important research.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yay. Sorry. Oh, those are my children. You can always count on them. Sometimes.
Absolutely.
Not when it's time to clean the house or clean up their stuff,
but to celebrate you and also to really highlight the importance of family and teacher connections.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So we're going to open it up now for question and answers. And so please, audience members, include questions in chat. We've got about 7 minutes or so for some question and answers. So thank you so much. If you don't mind, I'll open up the questions. If you were to design a teacher education program today, how would you infuse or integrate opportunities for pre-service teachers to have meaningful connections with parents, caregivers, and families?
That's a great question. And I think it really comes from those experiences that are firsthand. So we have to figure out ways and to standardize it, because one of the things as a clinical educator and going into the field and seeing student teachers go into different classrooms, they experience different things. Some will not get parent engagement. Some will be invited to parent teacher conferences. And so to make it standardized is one. But in that standardization, have those opportunities. Now, the hardest part is that it's during the school day when we're really not engaging with parents. But maybe make some types of project-based learning where they can have hands-on experience to work with parents, alongside parents, and sort of delving into maybe what it is that the parent, having some kind of Q&A opportunity so they can hear perceptions of the parent and maybe some of their um, calls to concern for student success, and the things that they would like to maybe take a voice in actively to make that relationship more successful. But certainly, I think that it's hands-on experience in creating opportunities for them to actually engage with parents, and standardizing that. But then also, if in addition to that, I think within the classroom, teaching in higher ed, we can go through case studies with role play, so that they have the practice of engaging in a simulated sort of activity that gives them that familiarity with the most types of common things that you'll encounter with making family relationships successful.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask one more question and then I'll turn it over to the audience. This research is incredibly fascinating. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about the research process. As you were engaging with your participants, and I was thinking particularly about the photo elicitation, was there anything that participants said that just took you, by surprise, or participants' responses, were they what you expected, and how did you handle that?
Well, being that it was a semi-structured interview, I just let them be open-ended and talk at length. I wasn't guiding them or steering them to any thought process. So I let them speak. The setting that I drew the data from has, a demographic that isn't acclimated to, I guess, what you could say, culturally diverse settings. And so I had participants in shock when they went into schools, to actually have to take that theory now into practice, because they hadn't engaged with culturally diverse families and settings and students and what have you. So a lot of what I was hearing that was concerning, and they're young, and that's fine, but that it's our job then to offer them and to help them understand the theoretical models that are in place. Bronfenbrenner, Joyce Epstein has done a lot of work with parent-teacher engagement, and giving them that insight so that they can see the purpose and practice of this, and then how to use it as well. So I think for me, the hardest thing, well, they're young, so that's okay. All of that's supposed to be, that's where they're at in life. I was ill prepared, and I think a lot of this comes out of the fact that I don't want them to have those. And yes, we learn on the job, but if we could better prepare them in ways that produce cultural humility. So you're going into that classroom knowing that you want to be a partner and that your parents could be your greatest ally, rather than learning from mentor teachers, which at times, aren't very open to parent-teacher partnerships. We all know what the staff lounge sounds like at times, for those of us that have taught in public school or what have you. So I think hearing the night that the way that they were sort of naive in their thought process, it's my job as that teacher educator to fill in those gaps. So I was disheartened, but it's also where they're at and they're not getting it. And if they got it, and there was a candidate who talked about taking other classes as electives. So she was saying that they're not saying you have to take these, but if you take these classes, and the other thing is they seem to be very knowledgeable about culturally responsive teaching practices, which you can put on the frame of parent engagement, but it is a little different as well. And so really kind of, just sort of moving the dial a little to include that, I suppose, would be very helpful.
Thank you so much. And we're going to pause here, and we've got about time for maybe one or two questions. And Dr. Frechette, I hope you're seeing all the fabulous notes of congratulations to you.
I'm going to read them and sit down and enjoy them afterwards. Yeah, I'm seeing some of them. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Yes.
All right, so I am going to ask the final question, if that's all right with you.
Sure.
So in this conference, in this context of the NEERO annual conference, we have a number of emerging researchers who are coming up and learning about the research process and really engaging in research for the first time. What advice would you have for them as they are engaging in research on work with families, work with communities? What advice would you have for them?
I think one of the things I say to any student entering a doctoral program is whatever brought you there, why you're there, the problem of practice you're selecting, you have to be passionate about. At least in my experience, myself and then the colleagues that I had as I went through the program. If you're passionate enough about the work that you're doing, you're going to, not only bring attention to the areas that need exploring, but it's going to come with this momentum that's going to really sustain you to the end of your doctoral studies, but also add to the literature in ways that are going to benefit future practitioners and researchers and scholars. So I think you have to select a topic that you're really passionate about, and also be open to your own biases and think about, because you are so passionate, check those and try to understand the other sides of the literature and look at everything so that you can have a balanced piece of work that you're creating for your dissertation work.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your research expertise and also the sage advice that you're offering to doctoral students who are beginning and continuing on their doctoral journeys as well. So we're going to say thank you again and give you a round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Very much appreciated, and thank you again for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Williams.